Welcome to Cinescope Today, where our goal is to view and discuss current release films from a perspective that celebrates movies and their stories, characters, music, and relevance to the world around us, not necessarily free from criticism. I'm your host, Chad Hopkins, and joining me today, as always for this show, is my co-host, Seth O'Neill, and we are talking about The Commuter. Seth, how are you doing tonight?
Fantastic.
Good to hear. We're glad to be back. We talked about Jumanji just a couple weeks ago. We've been wanting to get a new episode out there as soon as we could, but just various scheduling this and that, and no promises of having a new episode by a certain date. We delayed, and we're happy to be back today.
Yeah, no, our schedules sadly have not been very friendly to us over the past few weeks, so it's good to finally at least have a night where we can go experience a new movie and be able to talk about it.
Yeah, and we'll get back to we'll get to a more regular schedule eventually, I'm sure. That'll be super easy once we're living together in a few months. But for now, here and there, we'll have new episodes talking about current release films. So we're just going to go ahead and dive into it. There were several movies to come out this year that had outstanding critic reception. There was Paddington 2, there was The Post, and there was The Phantom Thread, among others. And we considered all three of those as possibilities, but then we decided, all those movies have everybody ranting and raving about it already anyway, so why do we need to talk about it?
Right, yeah. We kind of looked at the critic scores, looked at the reviews, and we figured that if there's these movies already getting good talk, there's no reason for us to publicize that even more, because we obviously want to be able to give people different opinions about even the movies that are not talked about.
Yeah, so we are talking about The Commuter this week, which released on January 12th of 2018, was directed by, I'm going to butcher this, so my apologies, ella-rae, collet-serra, who also directed House of Wax, Goal 2, Living the Dream, Orphan, Unknown, Nonstop, Run All Night, and most recently The Shallows. It was written by Byron Willinger, Philip de Blasi, and Ryan Engel, and the music was by Roque Banos, who also composed a score for The Machinist, The Oxford Murders, Evil Dead, Old Boy, In the Heart of the Sea, Risen, and Don't Breathe. And the movie stars Liam Neeson, Vera Farmiga, Patrick Wilson, Jonathan Banks, Andy Nyman, Elizabeth McGovern, Sam Neill, Dean Charles Chapman, and ella-rae Smith. So, like we like to start off with on this show, we're starting off spoiler-free for a few minutes. Did you have any expectations for this movie, Seth?
I did have expectations, and the only reason I had expectations is because it's a Liam Neeson movie, and once you've seen one Liam Neeson movie, kind of a good taste of the other ones, because Liam Neeson is now kind of in this, don't want to say, I guess I can say it, actor rut, where he has a specific type of movie that he is kind of in. So I kind of expected a little bit of what the story might be like, because it seemed very similar to Taken and Nonstop. Just kind of those action, he's stuck in a situation, needs to solve it, and needs to be the hero type movie.
Yeah, so would you at least say those expectations are positive though? Do you like those kind of movies?
I do. I mean, they're fun movies.
Yeah.
I was a huge fan of Taken. I wouldn't say a huge fan of Nonstop, because Taken was like the original, like the OG Liam Neeson action movie. Then it kind of it kind of did like a domino effect. Now these are kind of following the same path. And I do enjoy these movies because it's just a fun kind of action movie that isn't like necessarily like amazing, but it's really enjoyable to watch because it's just Liam Neeson doing his cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, I had the same sort of expectations. I expected a decent Liam Neeson action movie, and on the whole, that's what I got.
No.
He's likable, like he always is. The suspense is high, as it should be in this kind of movie. We were talking a little bit in the car on the way back, one or two too many twists, I think, that were just unnecessary, because this isn't the kind of movie that needs twists in order to be enjoyable. And a couple of the action sequences to me we're on a train. You can calm down a little bit. We don't need this high, big budget action sequence. Just just play out the suspense and you're okay. But they did have those couple big budget action sequences with weird camera effects and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, we expect all the action stuff with Liam Neeson, so there's not really a need to go over the top. But I mean, but this in this day and age, people kind of want the over the top. Like they're really looking for how they're going to change this action movie, how they're going to make it different than the others. So I'm sure a lot of directors and a lot of cinema teams try to figure out what's the way that we can make our action scenes even bigger than the last movie, so they can try to wow the audience and make them remember that fight scene.
Mm-hmm. So would you say, on the whole, you recommend this movie to people who see it in theaters in particular?
I would say not in theaters. I would say this is more of a like Redbox movie. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a movie that it'd be enjoyable to see one time, but after you see it once, it's not one that I would come back to like purposefully.
I would say I don't not recommend seeing it in the theater. I think there's many other better options right now. We mentioned a few of them already. There's always Jumanji that you can go back and see that is still outstanding. I saw it a second time just this past weekend or two. But if you've seen the other movies that are out there, or if you've seen all that has interested you, and this is just another one on the list, and you have the funds and the interest, then yeah, go see it in theaters. I'm not going to say it's not worth seeing, but just don't maybe prioritize it.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think that it's that. I mean, if you enjoy the Liam Neeson path, like the storyline Liam Neeson typically does, then you'll enjoy this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, again, not like you said, not a priority. Not really one that's gonna wow and amaze you. It's just a Liam Neeson story that's decent and it'll be entertaining.
Okay. Well, let's move on to spoiler stuff. So if you haven't watched the movie yet, veer away because we are going to be talking about more specifics, starting with the story. So what story elements or action sequences or anything like that stood out to you?
So I'll kind of just start at the beginning, based off just that's a nice place, very good place to start. Yes. But at the very beginning, I really enjoyed kind of the part of it where it's kind of saying he's just a normal dude. He has a normal routine every day. Wakes up 6 o'clock, wakes up his family, gets everything ready, goes to work, comes back home, and it's making Liam Neeson human.
Mm-hmm.
And because a lot of times, I mean, nowadays we see Liam Neeson as this action hero god character. Like we know that he's going to do something amazing, so we kind of already have him kind of high on this pedestal. And I feel like they were trying to bring him down back to humanity, saying like he has a family. He has a regular job. He's no one special in this movie. And I was talking to you about this in the car. I was hoping that they would keep him a normal person with not a like bad A career where he was a fighter and like just gonna beat up some bad guys. And I was hoping that would be this story was gonna be different than all the other ones. But then they brought in that he was a cop like for the first
Right.
part of his career. And that kind of brought me down because we know that he sold life insurance. That was what he was doing at that point in time in the movie. And then he like mentioned he was a cop, and I was just like, dang it, they had something good going that he was going to be just a regular, no like career, like a fighting career background. Obviously, they brought that in and made him more of a typical Liam Neeson character. So, but I did like that they at least showed that he had his routine down to a T every single day, just a normal dude, and the being riding the train back and forth with that was part of his everyday life.
Yeah, I really like that opening sequence as well. It was a montage of sorts where we got this guy's life with his family, where he is waking up every morning at the same time to do the same things every day, day in, day out, for more than a decade at this point. It's simple, but it was also really effective in giving us some sort of smaller background information, like the financial strain that his marriage is going through, and at the same time, their continued dedication to each other. There's the waving the wedding ring at each other as they say goodbye. Like, hey, I still remember, I still love you. At the end of the day, we're still married to each other, and I enjoy that. So I like those smaller moments that were in that montage. Now, the rest of it is the action. I mean, and that's just what this movie is. It's an action movie in a large part. And the action sequences I mentioned earlier, just to get more specific, the fight scene with the guy who had the guitar went on for like 5 minutes. And it was just swinging things at each other in an empty train car. And it was like this weird camera effect where it wasn't quite slow motion, but it almost gave it the sense of slow motion or over stylization, almost like a comic book. During that sequence, it was strange, and it was like, okay, we need here's the checklist of things that go in an action movie. We've got location, we've got tension, we've got bad guy, we've got good guy. Oh, here's our action sequence. Let's put it in right here. And it just felt like they were trying to be. I don't think they were trying to be, but it ended up just being generic and out of place.
Yeah, I think that was just one of the moments where I think it was a minute too long. They could obviously the fight scene I think was necessary, was going to happen, but I think they overdid it and kind of made it longer than it should have. And it was very cheesy. I don't know. I mean, it was just, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it in the best way and best words, but it wasn't a fight scene that I really enjoyed from beginning to end. It was kind of, I saw it at the beginning, I liked it. Then after a while, I was kind of bored with it because, like you're saying, they were swinging things at each other. And also, my question was throughout the fight, there was gunfire, and no one from the other subway car was like reacting to it. Like, it didn't show them how, like, if they could hear it, which they should have. Obviously, it's a gunshot happening, and so that was just, that didn't make sense at all. So there's just some parts of the fight where I was looking at it like, some of this part just doesn't make sense. And I don't know. I was over. I guess you could say I was over analyzing. At the same time, I was just like thinking about realistically how like this fight just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, the other action sequence that came to mind as being just too much was the whole train derailment sequence, and that one was almost like playing with the line of plausibility, where they were right on that curve when they finally decoupled from the rest of the train. And the whole point was if they hit that curve at 70 miles an hour, however fast they were going to flip and they were going to die. And they do it at the very last second, but they were still going the same speed. And so in reality, I would have thought that they would have rolled everywhere and they would have smashed up and they all would have been dead no matter what. Now, again, Liam Neeson action movie. I got to frame my mind around the art form that we're watching. This is a Liam Neeson action movie, and we have to turn our brains off just a little bit. But I was like, come on. We could have gotten to this point without having this over the top, we just survived a train crash sequence.
Yeah, and also R.I.P. to the conductor. His death happened so fast, and like you just like forget about it because all of a sudden like you're focused on Liam Neeson's the back cart of the train and everything. That dude, like he's dead. But like you said, yeah, the physics behind it doesn't make sense because again, like you said, their point was they wanted to get detached before they got to the curve. That way they'd slow down, not hit the curve as fast. And that was another thought while I was watching. That was another thing that I thought of because I was just like, that doesn't really make sense because the way that they phrased it didn't seem like it's supposed to be that close to the curve in order for them to be safe. And also the whole like last car, like the whole derailment scene of the last car and how all of a sudden it gets off the tracks and all that stuff. You'd think that they'd be really injured in the car still. Mm-hmm. Like at the end of the thing, wherever like their trade car was turned sideways, getting hit by all these massive objects and being turned and twisted and all that stuff. Everyone like was able to get up and just walk around just fine. Like no one was hurt. You're just like, that's again another thing. You're like, realistically, someone had to be majorly hurt in this incident. No one just comes in from a 70-mile-per-hour train that crashes into several objects and just walks away just like, yeah, that was nothing. Like I've been in a car accident where I got hit like we got hit 20 miles an hour and I was sore like. Mm-hmm. Like it was hard to get out of the car just without back pain. Like everyone on that scene was like walking just fine.
Yeah, and even putting up a fight against Murphy there at the end, right?
Which doesn't make sense at all. But again, the thing is, like, it's a Liam Neeson movie. They don't make these movies thinking, you know what? Let's include some physics into this. Like,
let's bring in this physics expert to make sure that we're being completely accurate
right.
to
there's
the
no
events of an actual train crash.
They just kind of throw the science books out the window and they say, you know what? Even though they hit the curb, they were on the same speed. Liam Neeson's in that cart though. So just him being there, his presence saves everybody.
It's like the Michael Bay approach. Yeah. You know what would be cool if
giant robots.
Yeah.
And then a giant robot came and saved Liam Neeson and his friends.
If only. Let's talk about characters a little bit more, which really means let's just talk about Michael, Liam Neeson's character.
The character.
He has this immense pressure to provide for his family. Like I said, from that opening sequence, we see that there's a little bit of financial strain. They're trying to pay for their kid to go to college. He says at one point early on when he gets fired from his insurance job, we're hand to mouth. Like I depend on this job because I'm 5 years away from retirement, and this is my livelihood. This is what puts the food on the table, and I'm trying to send my kid to school. Can you be considerate of that? Um, and so he's a good guy in that he's trying to be the best husband, the best father that he can. And at the same time, he's also a guy who is tired of the same old, has lots of reasons to go along with this mystery woman who calls him on the phone or who introduces herself on the train and offers him this magical $100,000 right after the events of getting fired that morning. So he really has a whole lot of motive to just go along with everything and to kill Prin and to walk away with the money for his family. But he doesn't.
Yeah, and that, like you said, his family is his number one concern, number one priority. Like that's what the whole movie focused on. That's why the beginning sequence was so crucial, because you wanted to see what his most important parts of his life were, which obviously was his wife and his child. And when he was presented the opportunity, you know, the way it was presented to him, obviously she said it was like hypothetical at first, and he was kind of just playing along with her game, and then he was thrown into the situation kind of without a decision, really. She basically said, "Hey, there's $25,000 that's already there for you to take, and then it's up to you." And so they kind of threw it in there, and he didn't really get a decision, because if he said no, I mean, obviously
Mhm.
you saw it, they killed somebody, and
Yeah, he,
he
he
didn't.
had the choice insofar of uh, I get to choose whether this guy lives or dies by sticking with this or not.
Right. So it just by having the guilt that his decisions ending someone else's, that kind of forced him to act even more and kind of pushed him past his boundary, because he is now kind of juggling two things in his hand that he didn't want to be responsible for. He didn't want to be responsible for Prin's life, and he didn't want to be responsible for another innocent person being killed because of this evil organization that's causing all this havoc. So it was a big crisis that he was thrown into that obviously he didn't want to be a part of, because several times you see him trying to get his way out by trying to save his family, make sure they're safe, and then find a way to get him off this train, get him out of this situation, so that he can just go back to living his normal life and get over just the crisis of him being fired from his job. So it was just a lot thrown at him, and he was obviously trying to be the bigger person, the bigger man, and trying to create a safe life for him and his family.
I We were talking about this a little bit in the car as well. Did we ever find out why he wasn't a cop? I would assume it was age, because he said he was around 60 this time, and he'd been in the insurance job for 10 years or so. And so 50, I would think if you're a field cop, might be an okay age to sort of leave it behind because your body's aging and you're not as prepared for that. But we also didn't get any sense of whether there was a history of like tension between him and the police department, or if there was some reason where he was bitter at them because he was maybe let go prematurely because of his age or whatever reason. So I was just curious, why is it important that he was a former cop? Why would he even leave that?
Yeah, and what I do remember is whenever he was talking to Alex Murphy, his friend cop. I remember him saying that he left. I want to say he left for his family. I want to say that was a part of the conversation that they talked about. And whenever I think about him leaving for his family, I was thinking about maybe the hours were not very helpful. That he wanted to spend more time with his kid and help him pursue college and pursue a good college. I think he said he was going to go to Syracuse. I think is what the movie was focusing on, and also just being there for his wife. So I want to say he based off of what it was saying that he left it because he wanted to spend time with family. It could have been another reason. I don't think if the movie specifically said this is the reason why he stopped being a cop. Uh, but they at least kind of left it open.
Mm-hmm.
But they did kind of drop some hints. But again, I think it's really just not clear. It's just open interpretation, however you want to see it.
Yeah, I think it would have been nice to have some sort of sense of his history with the police force because that might have made his situation at the insurance place a little bit more meaningful. Like, he doesn't want to be at the insurance place. It's dull because he enjoyed his life as a cop and left it because of all these other reasons, whatever may have been. I think that would have enriched the story just a little bit more, enriched the character a little bit more. And then that would have made his return to the police force as a detective at the end of the movie that much more meaningful as well. So that's just a small nitpick. I would have liked to have known more about that past. Um, but ultimately, when it comes to his character and all the reasons he had to just go along with this and walk away with $100,000 to provide for his family after losing his job, he didn't. And it was at risk to his family that he didn't do it. And I admired that about him because as much as he loves his family, it wasn't the right thing to do to sacrifice other people in order to protect them. So I think that was the most important part of his character was that he is a good guy in a bad situation who doesn't let the bad situation corrupt his goodness.
Yeah, and I think that is it speaks true because the evil organization, like the bad cop Alex Murphy, like the one thing that he said whenever he murdered the guy that this whole movie is kind of the revolving around, the kind of the murder that led to the suspect needing to, or the
Witness.
Prin the witness needing to be protected was because he was talking to he was talking to the victim, and Alex Murphy's words to him was, "There's no nobleness." That like what was this? Wait, what do you say? It's like there's no.
I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something about nobility
Yeah,
and
I was
how
saying
it
like
doesn't
there.
really exist.
Yeah, no, there's no such thing as nobility. There's only I can't remember everything, but he was like just the focus that he's saying there's no, you can't be noble anymore. That's not a thing. But
Mm-hmm.
Michael's character, that's what he was standing for in that whole movie. Like he was being a noble character doing the right thing, and even though that there was so many ways that he could get out and do the wrong thing and make it easy for himself, so he decided to be the bigger man, decided to be the noble person and do what's right, even though it could potentially harm those he loves. And that was kind of the two sides of the movie that I was fighting for. The side that says just do the easy thing, get the money, go live your life. And then there's also a side that says, okay, what's the correct way what's the correct decision? What's the noble, mature, good decision I need to make that will make me feel like I'm being the correct human that I need to be.
Mm-hmm. And we can use that to transition into talking about Murphy himself because one of the very first lines we hear from him is at the bar. Michael is drinking away his problems, and Murphy talks about how being a police officer isn't about doing the right thing anymore. It's about politics. So we get that hint early on that he has a little bit of corruption inside of him, that uh, he is not on the path of correctness as we would hope from a police officer. I like Patrick Wilson. He's long been an actor I've admired, um, and I really didn't admire, or I really didn't expect this twist that involved his character. I think you said you saw it coming a little bit, but I don't know if I just wasn't thinking about it. I don't know, but when it turned out that he was the guy who killed the person who now has the witness, and that he sort of instigated this, it's like, oh, okay, and then it was revealed, oh, you set up Michael to go on this. And it that's where the extra twist sort of came in for me. Like, really? Um, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the only reason I saw it coming was whenever they said it was a cop, I figured that it had to be someone that we knew. No,
Mm-hmm.
because you're always looking for that kind of twist at the end of, okay, it was someone that we knew all along that was part of the big story. So I was just thinking about what cops do we know that would make this twist, and the only cops we knew were Alex. And then we also were introduced to the chief.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of the twist. I was either thinking it's the chief or it's Alex. So it's kind of the two choices I had. So whenever Alex like volunteered to go up to the train, I figured it leaned towards Alex a little bit more. So those were the two I was kind of juggling.
I think I was aiming more towards the captain, the chief of the force, because I think that's who they wanted us to suspect,
Right.
honestly, because even at the start of the film in the bar, they set him up to be sort of the antagonist to Murphy,
Yeah.
this character that they didn't necessarily get along very well. And so I do think that was the obvious scapegoat, in retrospect, at least. Um, by the way, that was Sam Neill from Jurassic Park.
Oh.
So nice little friendly face.
Yeah.
But um, it was just strange that this whole twist itself was just convoluted. Like, he just happened to bump into Michael this morning, knew he was going to get fired, or as Michael suggested, maybe even got him fired. I don't know. Maybe even a larger conspiracy than the film itself presented. It was just, again, this is a Liam Neeson action movie. I don't need this level of convolution to feel like I've been entertained. Just give me Liam Neeson beating up a bunch of bad guys and saving people from a train, and I'm okay. But maybe that's just me.
Yeah.
But then that also brought me to the idea that if they needed to find out who Prin was, why didn't they just stake out the Cold Spring train station, because they knew that's where she was being dropped off, or whoever it was, and see who went home with the FBI detail? You know, because those guys weren't hiding the fact that they were waiting there for somebody. Uh, Again, I don't want to overanalyze any of this, but I was just like, you could have just waited, and it would have been really obvious who it was, and then boom, you're done.
Yeah. And could reverse a little bit to kind of what you're saying a little bit before you got to this point, but I'll come back to it. But whenever you're saying that you didn't really like how that Alex had told them where he was, what training he was doing. I actually, in a way, I liked it because it kind of told you why they selected him in the first place and how this all came into being, because Alex was able to tell them what train, where he works, and all that, and the pieces kind of fell there. So I kind of like it because at the beginning of the movie, I was like, why do they choose him in the first place? Like, how do they know who to choose? So to me, it made more sense in a way. And again, I also agree that there were a lot of twists and turns because you're trying to understand the whole big picture at this, like, within the last like 5 minutes of the movie. So you're like trying to connect everything within the last 5 minutes because that's where they throw it all at you. But going to where you're saying why did they wait? Why didn't they wait till Cold Springs? I mean, that would have been smart, obviously.
It would have been a shorter movie, though.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Liam Neeson wouldn't be able to do all the stuff he just did unless if they did that. But also, I guess you can see that, say it in a way, is it was a act of desperation. Because I think they're afraid if she even got to the FBI, she'd be able to tell them all the information then, and then their whole operation would be blown. But I mean, obviously, it had to happen so Liam Neeson could save the day.
Yeah.
But I guess you can look at it in a way of like, it was a way of desperation for them to try to clear their name without their hands being on it. So they could try to make sure that they couldn't even be traced back to it.
That's true. So that's a good point. The fact that Michael is an ex-cop and was just fired and had all these factors weighing against him to give him the potential motivation to do something like this of his own free will would have been pretty difficult to argue against in court had he not been successful. So that's a good point. Now, the other characters to talk about, we can sort of just lump together because it's the other commuters. It's the other people on the train that he sees every day. We have Jonathan Banks as Walt, which is funny for us Breaking Bad fans. And by the way, we did see this on Jonathan Banks' birthday. So happy birthday to Jonathan Banks. But I like seeing him. I like him a lot in both Breaking Bad and in Better Call Saul as Mike. And it was nice to see him on the big screen. I don't know if I'd ever seen him on the big screen before. I mean, he was in older films like Airplane, but this was the first time seeing him sort of prominent, even though he was dead after 2.5 scenes. It was just nice to see him.
R.I.P. Yeah, I mean, it was just a familiar face, because in this movie, there's not really a lot of familiar faces you'd see. Like, there's maybe 4 that I myself recognize from previous movies or TV shows. But it's just another familiar face. His character wasn't anything major. It was just someone that it was a friendly face on the train, and that's someone that Michael connected with. So that whenever he saw Walt die, that was kind of another just like, okay, what the heck? Like, they just killed one of my just acquaintances, friends. I don't know what level they were at really. But once he saw that, he was just like, holy crap, this is real. Like, he just died.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just a person that they threw in there to kind of shock Michael into doing what he needed to do.
Yeah, I like that they established from the beginning that he had these special relationships with other people on the train, because there are lots of people who commute together in this way every single day. And it would make sense that when you ride a train with people multiple hours every single day for many, many years, you're going to get to know them. You're going to build relationships with them. You're going to be friends with them. And so the fact that he was friends with people like Walt and Tony and whoever else was on the train, the conductor. I don't think he was actually the conductor, but it's the same actor who was the commissioner, I believe, in The Dark Knight. Pretty sure.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, he reminded me of him at least. But I like that we had these established relationships, because it did make Walt's death in front of the bus more impactful, because we knew that they were friends, and then it made everybody's sense of betrayal at Michael, thinking that he was all of a sudden turning against them, holding them hostage. It made that a little bit more impactful as well, because they felt betrayed, because it was a familiar face who was suddenly using that familiarity against them. And then at the end, when they all pull the "I am Spartacus" scene,
Right.
and as corny as that is, as cheesy as that is, it was a nice moment, because it was an extension of what we talked about with Michael, where good people can just be good people. And even when they're put in a crappy situation, even when it might be more beneficial to you in that moment to step aside and let somebody else do the right thing, it reveals more about who you are as a person to stand up and do the right thing yourself. And so I liked that scene for that meaning.
Yeah, for sure. And it was a bigger picture than just Liam Neeson at the very end, which was a nice thing to see. That it wasn't just Liam Neeson by himself single-handedly saving the day. It was the people that were on the train that were just regular people, and there was also people that were just there on their first time on the train, or their first time in a long time. Like those
Mm-hmm.
people that Michael didn't know at all, and just seeing them come together at the last scene, knowing that Michael was innocent and this cop was dirty. They were able to come and save an innocent girl from being killed because she was just at the wrong place, the wrong time,
Mm-hmm.
and saw a murder. Like it was just everyone being noble and standing up for what was right in that situation.
I do think there were a couple moments where they were a little bit quick to trust Michael, because he didn't put up a good face for himself at a couple points where he was brandishing the gun, waving it in people's faces, threatening, not like actively threatening, but he was using it to get what he wanted. And then it seemed like they sort of just breezed over that and, oh, okay, we're cool. It's just Michael. It's Michael, guys. Don't worry about it. Small complaint, but it was
Yeah.
just like you moved on from that a little bit sooner than I would have.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, if I was in their situation, I would be confused and scared because
Mhm.
this guy's talking on the phone to people and he sounds like he doesn't know what's going on. Slash, he's waving a gun in the air and he took a few shots already. So I'm not sure what I would do because obviously that's just a weird situation that the guy with the gun looks confused and worried, and I'm
Mhm.
confused and worried as well because he has a gun.
Yeah, you'd almost rather him be certain with what he's doing, even if
Right.
it was for evil intent.
Right. So I mean, I think they were just as confused as Michael was about what the heck is going on. They just know
Mhm.
that I better kind of follow what he's doing right now because he has the weapon, and I'm just sitting here. I want to be alive.
Since we mentioned The Dark Knight, it reminds me of the thought experiment that the Joker pulls on the two boats, where they each have the detonator for the other boat. Uh, where you would think that one or the other would pull the trigger, but nobody does. It was that same sort of, yeah, we could just let Prin take the fall for this and let herself be killed, or we could I and Spartacus this situation, and all of us live or all of us die. So just since we mentioned The Dark Knight, I was like, oh yeah, that's sort of a little parallel there too.
Yeah, for sure. And I do like uh I do like in the sense of kind of going back to Alex Murphy's because now we're going back now leading up to the Alex Murphy reveal of him being the bad guy. I like how it showed how his character, because whenever him and Michael were talking about this organization, Alex is like, "You don't know who you're dealing with. I do. Like I've seen them and I know what they can do." So you can see that he was now stuck in the loop
Mm-hmm.
of doing their bidding because I'm sure that he was similar in a similar situation that Michael was, and he got looped in, and then he was stuck in this loop of doing their deeds, and they would continually pay him off because he owes them because they
Mm-hmm.
paid him that much. So he's now stuck in their little organization. So I have a feeling if Michael actually did it, he would have been stuck in that organization's loop because that organization knew how to get to him because all I had to do is threaten his family and he'd be able to do whatever they tell him to do.
Right.
So it was a nice little thing to see that how Alex was really it seemed like he was acting more so in fear than him wanting to do that because he didn't seem like he was a bad person. He was just stuck in a situation where he feared the organization more than he wanted to stand up for what was right.
He even said, I have a family too.
Right.
So it does give that sense that he maybe went through a similar scenario where he was forced to do things, but he played the politics of it rather than doing the right thing like Michael did.
Right.
Now, briefly talking about the music, I liked the music. I was listening along while we were watching today, and there were a few standout moments. Was there anything music-wise that stood out to you?
I mean,
any particular sequences, at least?
I mean, for this movie, since there's a lot of action sequences, the music is more prevalent because it wants to give you a sense of thrill and a sense of just you want to be pumped up with the action itself. So there was a lot of times where the music got me more involved into the scene because that's obviously the intent is they want the music to be matching with the intensity of the scene. And this movie obviously is intense basically throughout the whole movie. It's a Liam Neeson movie. It's going to be intense no matter what. So the music was there to match the intensity of whether it's fighting or the intensity of, okay, now he's scared. So we kind of have the music kind of back there kind of showing that how he's feeling. So the music was obviously intense throughout the whole entire movie. It had just different levels of intensity, whether it was more prevalent during the action scenes and then less prevalent during the actual parts where he was trying to figure out what the heck's going on in the train.
Yeah, I thought the action music was fine. It was a little bit generic, which is what you would expect from a movie like this, and that's fine. But still, a majority of the score I thought was pretty melody based, which is refreshing for a movie like this. I really liked the opening music in particular during that montage sequence we were talking about. It's very piano heavy and pretty and almost sort of passage of time-esque in a good way. So I like the music in that respect, and no knocks against it for being generic. Sometimes that's what a movie calls for, and when you have a generic movie, you go for generic music, and that's perfectly acceptable. So I did like it. Roque Banos isn't a composer I was very familiar with at all, really. I don't know if I would have been able to ever mention that name from memory at all, but pretty good job here.
Yeah,
so,
whenever you're doing music for a Liam Neeson movie, you're kind of just like, hey, it's Liam Neeson. I can just make whatever. It's probably going to still be fine. It's Liam Neeson.
Yeah. Probably a lot of temp tracks and stuff like that. Now, our relevant section, I've mostly talked about mine, but I'll recap after you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously for this one, this movie, the relevance is within the importance of family, which Michael embodies himself. He shows that how important family is to him and how that is his driving force. And obviously, family is just important no matter what, because without them, he really has no point to go to work. He has no point to do what he does because he's there for his family and to provide for them and be there as a leader. Because obviously, he was the person in that family that was helping his kid go to school by being a great father. He was a good role model for his kid because he was doing the roles a father should be doing, helping his kid with homework, making sure he's doing what he needs to be doing, loving his wife the way he needs to love his wife. I mean, obviously the movie showed at the beginning that how they have good days, they have bad days, but no matter what, they still show the ring saying, "Hey, I'm yours, you're mine." And then also just the topic of nobleness and the importance of knowing what you should do even when it's harder than doing the easy thing. And that's just another thing that Michael had to fight with this entire movie of not just choosing the easy way out, but choosing the right way out.
You nailed it. Both of my points exactly. Doing the right thing when it's the right thing to do, no matter the strain on you, no matter the pressure or the incentive to do the wrong thing, do the good thing. And that's what Michael does. And that's what the other passengers do at the end, standing up against Murphy. So that's admirable. And then, like you said, the fact that relationship strain doesn't mean that those challenges are insurmountable and that you should stop trying to pursue loving each other. We've mentioned it a couple times, but they'd been through a lot. They had struggles with money. It was still tight, but they departed each morning by waving their wedding rings at each other, reminding each other of their commitment and their love for each other. And as you said, Michael throughout this whole movie is fighting just to keep his family alive. And that makes his decision to not kill Prin, when we've seen how much he cares about his family, we see that he cares even more about doing the right thing by essentially sacrificing his family to not kill Prin. So that's a smaller twist that I did really appreciate. And so, yeah, those are our big takeaways. Anything else? Any final thoughts about this movie before we wrap up?
No, I mean it's again like it's just a good Liam Neeson movie that you would expect from him, and it has those good messages that Liam Neeson kind of does, because Liam Neeson in all of those movies he's a good father, fighting for someone he loves and wanting to get them back from unsurmountable odds, and it's a good Liam Neeson movie. It's nothing crazy out of the ordinary. It's just something that it's just fun to watch.
Yeah, I'll sort of close up with something I mentioned to you earlier. Last Liam Neeson movie I talked about on a podcast was Nonstop back in 2014 when I was still on Movie Bite. And I said in that episode, don't the bad guys in Liam Neeson movies watch Liam Neeson movies? Because if they did, then they might make they might reconsider for a moment what they're going to do and who they're going to pursue, and maybe try and pick somebody aside from Liam Neeson to be the protagonist.
If I was ever in a fight, I would draft Liam Neeson to be my bodyguard.
Well, with that is the end of the official second episode of Cinescope Today. Thank you all for listening. Contact for the show, facebook.com/Cinescope Podcast and @Cinescope Pod on Twitter. Go over to iTunes or the Apple Podcast app on your iOS device to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And if you have any feedback or ideas or movie suggestions regarding upcoming releases that you want us to cover, let us know at thecinescopepodcast@gmail.com. Now, Seth, where can people find you online?
The place you can find me is on Twitter at Seth02. That is Seth, the letter O, then the number 2. And that is the best way to get in contact with me.
The same for me on Twitter at Chadadada. That is CHADADADA. You can also find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Chad.Hopkins. Just let me know you're a listener, and that'll increase the likelihood of me accepting your request. And don't forget about my other show, An American Workplace, where we talk about The Office from NBC. We just finished recapping season 3 of the show. So we're getting ready to dive into season 4 and onward, which is exciting. It's hard to believe we're approaching the halfway point of the whole show. Insane. But you can find that where podcasts can be found and at workplacepodcast.com. And show notes and contact information for this show can be found at thecinescopepodcast.com. And that is all for this week. Thank you everyone for listening to Cinescope Today, episode 2. I'm Chad Hopkins.
And I'm Seth O'Neill.
This was Cinescope Today, and we'll be back next time with episode 3. Have fun and celebrate movies.